I think we're still very much at the birth of this. This is very much the beginning. The brands we work with now, we sort of got that trust with them, the way they let us do our thing, and it returns great results. Simon had a video, I think, posted 3 days ago, which is now on 92 million views. It's got like 7 million likes. So the proof is there that we can make these things go viral. So you've got to just let us do it. Managers and agents have to think long term. In this creator game, if you want to make serious money, there has to be a long-term view on it. A really good lesson for smaller creators to take is figure out what exactly your purpose is, what exactly the mission behind your content is, and lead with that when having those conversations. I think the other thing that's super neglected is you're paying the creator for their knowledge of their audience and their ability to generate engagement. So directing someone on their artistic style because you think you can gather that engagement better, then I don't know why you're working with creators.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Creator Ops Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Schreiber. The goal of this podcast is to educate you on becoming a great operator in the creator economy. On today's episode, I talk with Jonny Davies, who is a senior talent manager at Sixteenth. Sixteenth is a management agency working with award-winning creators across a variety of niches. Jonny represents the world's most influential entrepreneurship and B2B creators such as Ali Abdaal and Simon Squibb. Ali Abdaal is a YouTuber, podcaster, and former medical doctor known for his engaging content on productivity, personal development, and entrepreneurship. His channel focuses on evidence-based strategies for productivity and has grown to over 6 million subscribers. In 2023, Ali launched his book titled Feel Good Productivity, and earlier this year, he launched his community Productivity Lab. Simon Squibb is a prominent entrepreneur and investor known for his inspiring journey from homelessness to founding multiple successful businesses. He is currently the CEO and founder of HelpBank, a platform designed to help individuals achieve their entrepreneurial dreams by connecting them with resources and support for free. Since Jonny has started working with him, he's been on a crazy growth trajectory, going from 3 to 10 million subscribers across all platforms. During our conversation, Jonny and I talked through the formation of Ali Abdaal's partnership with Headspace, navigating brand deals for Simon Squibb, building long-term IP for both creators, how to land your first brand deal as an emerging creator, how Ali and Simon structure their teams, and lastly, the future of equity deals in the creator economy. And now for my conversation with Jonny Davies. Brand deals are a huge part of being a manager. Will you explain the deal you did for Ali with the meditation app Headspace and why it's been such a good example of a fully aligned and deep partnership?
Yeah, I think that idea of really aligned partnerships is where it starts. It's Ali's a unique case and it's a brilliant model to follow. He'll only promote something if he uses it or if his team uses it. And Ali's been a Headspace user for sort of years. So when we started having those conversations, it obviously builds up slowly. It starts with YouTube integrations or partnerships like that. And then we got to a point where we were able to work a lot more deeply with their team and really understand what their goals were. And we came up with the idea to align with around Ali's book. Ali had a book come out last January called Feel Good Productivity. It's now a sort of New York Times bestseller, which is amazing. And the idea to align those two things and have something in Headspace's app, we ended up doing a collection called the Feel Good Productivity Collection, which was a sort of hand-picked list of their resources, which Ali really liked, and aligned with the chapters of the book, and then able to do sort of sponsored videos and promotions all leading towards that thing was amazing to be a part of. And it really is that, like for all partnerships, if you can find something in-app or on platform that makes that transition of users from the video to the service smoother or more integrated, then the better it is. And I think that goes for everything, really.
And when you were talking with their team, and just to explain it for everyone, Ali had he was a teacher, a course on the Headspace app as well. I mean, that's a long process. That's not just like a single brand deal, right? What were those conversations like with Headspace? What were maybe some of the friction points or just some of the talking points you guys were trying to flush out?
Yeah, so I guess it came to us. It's been a sort of long, ongoing partnership, right? It doesn't start out with something like that. And I think that's important to stress, that it's hard to pitch an idea like that to a brand if they're working with you for the first time. They came to us with the idea of sort of expanding the partnership and figuring out what we could do in-app as well. And then we sort of came to them with the idea of the idea of basing it around the book and sort of aligning on that front. And then conversations are really smooth, to be totally honest on that one. I think when your two parties are so well aligned like that and it fits perfectly into Ali's content, then those conversations can go a lot smoother. I think if you're trying to shoehorn a brand into someone's content that they don't use or are not a fan of, then it can be a lot more difficult, of course.
Sure. And did you guys structure that deal similar to the brand deals that he's done in the past, or was it kind of a mix of a couple of different things.
It was sort of a mix of a couple of different things. So we had like deliverables, like your traditional deliverables where it's social posts, but then we also had sort of fees around usage and things like that for in-app.
So you, obviously Ali is one of the creators you work with, and then Simon on the other side. What has been maybe your favorite partnership or the most aligned partnership that you've done with Simon? And his rise has been really crazy over the last year. You and I were talking about in the pre-interview, but he's gone. Tell me the numbers again.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, he just hit a couple of days ago 10 million across all platforms. And in the last 3 months alone, they've doubled their Instagram following, over a million in 3 months. So yeah, their growth's been pretty insane. And it's cool to see that come, because when I started working with him, I think they had around 3 million followers across all platforms. And I saw something, I was like, this is magic. I love what they're doing. And it now feels like everybody else is catching up, which is really cool. In terms of partnerships with him, it's an interesting one because his audience is so much like young entrepreneurs, people wanting to get their first business going, people want to sort of follow their dreams. It's really nice to be able to integrate in those products that help people do that. For instance, we work with Tide Bank here in the UK, and their offer for sort of business banking and getting people set up is super compelling. So it's an easy sell for us. And that goes across the board with sort of all our partners, like we work with Fiverr. And again, we see that as a really good tool for entrepreneurs just getting started out. So it's easy to sort of promote that to the audience. And I think that the same thing goes, right? If we see value in promoting this thing, then we'll do it. If we don't think it's a good tool, if we don't think it's useful for the consumer, then we won't touch it. And the only other thing, Simon, we don't work across is his ethos is very much giving as much free help as possible. So not putting anything behind a paywall. So we can't work with sort of anyone charging for help, like your sort of learning platforms behind paywalls or anything like that.
And as you negotiate with these brands, what's been the most challenging part of doing some of these deals and figuring out alignment and potentially having to say no to a lot as well?
Yeah, I think probably the most challenging thing is to get brands to let us have creative freedom as much as possible. With Simon's videos, they are all filmed in person. There's sort of no setup. It's sort of man in the street asking someone what their dream is. So it's hard to follow exact scripts and things like that. So getting that across and sort of aligning on that front can be challenging, but we're lucky with the brands we work with now. We sort of got that trust with them, the way they let us do our thing, and it returns great results most of the time. Like Simon had a video, I think posted 3 days ago, which is now on 92 million views. It's got like 7 million likes. So the proof is there that we can make these things go viral. So you've got to just let us do it.
What is the wording that you usually use with them? Do you have to kind of build them up and say, hey, like we'll follow your script here and here, but on this next one, we want to have a little bit more freedom? Do you ease them into the creative freedom process, or is it like, hey, we got to have creative freedom from the start, no matter what?
It's a lot easier now with the size we're at and the sort of the proof we have behind things to go in quite strong and be like, we have enough partners that we turn down a lot, so we can only work with those that sort of get what we do. So we are pretty strong on creative freedom as much as possible. Obviously, we try and hit talking points and CTAs that are provided. But I think, like Simon, it won't mind me saying this because I'm also horribly dyslexic, but we're both very dyslexic. So even getting Simon to read things like in a script and hit words for word is really challenging. So I think that bullet point structure of this is what has to be said. Everything else, crack on and make the most viral video you possibly can.
For someone like Simon, what do you think has been that key to his explosion over the last 10, 12 months? What's been kind of the formula there for achieving that level? Because that is very big, especially in the creator side of things. Usually it's a little bit more of a long grind of 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 years.
Yeah, I think he has been grinding at it. So he started posting videos like 4 years ago, which nobody really knows, and everyone sees it sort of as an overnight success. But like you said, it's never truly that. It really started to pick up momentum when they found this format, this repeatable format, which had that sort of really great hook at the front of what's your dream and someone in the street. And that is something that we've repeated, but then iterated on. So I think if you have a format that works really well, you can't just sort of milk it until it ends. You have to iterate on it and improve. I think people really align with him because there's a lot in the sort of business creative space. There's a lot of people either setting up courses which aren't worth their value, or it feels a lot like a money grab sometimes and almost showing off wealth. And he's truly the sort of antithesis to that. It's like, we're just going to help as many people as possible. And people really like and have aligned with that.
How do you think about building the long-term IP for someone like Simon, versus someone like Ali? Obviously, very different types of creators. But what's your thought process as for that?
Yeah, I think it differs. I think it's a lot easier to build IP on long form. I think having shows and things like that is really important. Like Simon's got his new podcast Blueprint, they've just named it, and it's sort of a podcast where they sit down with an entrepreneur and walk through their steps to success. I think that's really building shows and building IP in that manner is really useful. I think on short form, it is difficult to build that IP. I think you have to almost build IP by recognition, or like quasi IP by recognition that is known as his format now. The What's Your Dream format, it'd be hard for someone else to replicate without everyone just thinking, okay, you're ripping off Simon. So I think, yeah, it's difficult, but I think on long form and out of platform with newsletters and platforms, then it's a lot easier.
Yeah, the transition from the short form audience, getting them to go to long form content obviously can be a challenge, but many creators are figuring that out. Short form is such a great opportunity, but like you're saying, the long term is in the kind of the longer form content.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting point to touch on is the way you can almost feed from short form into long form if you are storytelling on short form. I think it's difficult where it's sort of unrelated videos, but we have videos that are meeting the people in the street, helping them with their dreams, and then following up with a longer term story on YouTube, and that's sort of them going out and getting it done, which is a really nice, easy way to transition viewers across, because we'll do a video meeting them, it might blow up, we'll then help them and make the longer form YouTube video, and then we can do sort of a recap on short form, which points people towards YouTube, which as a format works really nicely.
Tell me more about that, Jonny. So you do a short form piece of content with someone in the street saying, hey, what's your dream? And then you basically get with that person after they're done filming and say, hey, let's do a long form video.
Yeah. So an example I can give is that we met these twins in the street called the Macca Group twins, and they were sort of homeless at one point or another and were trying to start a cleaning company to sort of help out their family and things like that. Met them in the street. The video went super viral. They're like these incredibly their personality infectious twins. They're amazing. We then helped them sort of start this cleaning business and set them a challenge to clean London's dirtiest home. And if they sort of succeeded in that, we helped them with funding and things like that. And that long form video followed that story. And with the sort of payoff at the end, that we're able to bring their father over from Nigeria, who they hadn't seen in a decade or something like that. So it's really cool to then be able to transfer that over. And then we sort of made it like a trailer video on TikTok, which also did, I think, 5-10 million views to pull viewers across to the longer form story.
Yeah, that's awesome, because then obviously in the short form stuff, you're just linking back, hey, check out the full video, and trying to transition them as much as possible.
Yeah, and exactly. And the addition of YouTube Shorts allowing you to click through a video into a long form has been pretty cool. I'd love to see that if other platforms let you go onto YouTube, but I don't think we'll see that anytime soon.
I want to jump back really quick to some of the partnership side and your advice for maybe creators that aren't as big as Ali and Simon, trying to get longer term partnerships, and just maybe you're negotiating how you would, speak to them, someone who's kind of on the rise, but they don't want to do one-off stuff all the time. They want to try and build those long-term partnerships. What would you say to them?
I think leading with purpose rather than just sort of what the engagement a brand's going to get. If you can lead with the story behind why you really want to work with this brand and the sort of the value they'll be getting in addition to the views and the numbers, I think that works really nicely. You can build out a story arc. And that's how Simon and the team, before sort of I joined them, were getting on really well. They were charging great rates when their views weren't there because people were aligning with the story of wanting to help people and fix the education system and things like that. And that's how they were able to secure their sort of first couple of partners. So I think that's a really good lesson for smaller creators to take, is figure out what exactly your purpose is, what exactly the mission behind your content is, and lead with that when having those conversations. I think the other thing that's super neglected is sort of end of campaign work. So when a sort of campaign comes to an end, a lot of creators, when they aren't managed or sort of don't have fantastic management, is that will be the end. And you'll sort of send screenshots and then you won't hear from that. You won't speak to that person again. But I think that end of campaign wrap up, that end of campaign repitching, re-engagement is super, super useful and super important to build that relationship. And even if things have gone badly, like I say this internally all the time, if a campaign's gone badly, that's an opportunity to repitch, because it's not, oh, this has gone badly, let's never speak to them again. It's okay, we think this went badly for this reason. We'd like to try it this way, or we'd like to adapt our approach that way. So there's always something to be said at the end of a campaign. I think that's very underutilized.
That's something we talked about in a couple of episodes ago with Sarah Adam, who does a ton of influencer marketing at Wix. And she was saying out of hundreds of people that she's worked with, only a couple have sent actual, like you're saying, like screenshot follow-up post campaign saying, here's how it went, here's how, we think we can improve. And even if it does go well, hey, let's keep building on this. Here's a couple more ideas for it. It is pretty surprising and shocking sometimes the amount of creators and influencers that don't do that. And it is one of the benefits of working with a manager, working with an agent who kind of knows how the brand wants to work together and how to get those long-term relationships. If you don't talk to them again, or if the campaign goes well and then you just don't follow up with more ideas, how can you expect to have that long-term partnership? What do you think that brands are missing as they invest more into creators and influencers? What do you think the brands are still maybe just not understanding, or there's still a lot of convincing having to be done around?
I think touching back on the point of creative freedom, I think often you get brands, and especially in certain niches, whether it's financial, where they have got a lot of regulations to abide by, they sort of will they'll see it like a TV ad. So they'll send a brief and it'll be like exact talking points. Say this into the camera. That's what we want. And that's fine if this is a paid media deal that's not on the creator's platform, but just on yours, but boosting. That makes total sense because I think you can be more addy. But I think the way I look at sort of creative direction for creators is you should draw a box as a brand or an agent, draw a box of what you want and the direction you want to take it in, and then let the creator fill in the middle. So sort of have your limits, but let them relate it to their audience, let them do the storytelling. Especially with short form, especially with Instagram and TikTok, you can make incredible ads, and there are so many creators out there that make beautiful things and tell a great brand story, that just let them have a crack at it if you can get your box really detailed and exactly how you want it to be.
Give them the guardrails, but don't be commenting on creative style or what they're wearing or how they're shooting it or the angle they're doing it at. If you're going to do that, you might as well
hire a creative agency and do it yourself.
Yeah.
You're paying the creator for their knowledge of their audience and their ability to generate engagement. So directing someone on their artistic style because you think you can either gather that engagement better, then I don't know why you're working with creators. It seems to be a little nonsensical.
That's a great tool for agents and managers too, when they are talking to brands, the box of, hey, give us your box, like literally do the exercise with them and say, where are the guardrails? Like how far can we go, this way or that way? Say, all right, then you can go back to your creator and say, here it is. Let's play in this certain sandbox, but there's enough optionality, enough creative freedom for them to do what they want to do.
I think that's actually that sort of intertwines with the point we made earlier about creators and how to generate long-term partners is, if you are super creative, like most creators are, lead with your creativity. Like be pitching with an idea, not sort of, I want to work with you, these are my fees. Be pitching, I want to work with you and I actually think we could do it this way. And here's a great idea. I represent a guy called Max Klemenko, and he's like an incredible short form creator. He's a mad creative genius, emphasis on mad. But I think with him, like pitching is so much fun because I'll go, hey, what do you think of this brand? He's like, oh, they're cool. I really like them. And I'll go, give me the wackiest idea you have. Shoot that in an email with a sort of comment at the bottom going, is this idea crazy? And that sort of thing gets brands thinking and gets brands going, okay, that's actually an interesting take on what we were doing.
I've heard mixed reviews from different agents and different managers around for younger creators who want to work with a specific brand doing free work for them initially and then sending it to them saying, hey, we did this piece. Let's do a long-term partnership. I've heard people on one side say, hey, you shouldn't do that because why would they pay for something if you already did it for free? I've also heard the opposite where, hey, it's good social proof. It's a great way to build trust. What's your take on that?
I disagree with the first comment of why would they pay for it if you're doing it for free. I think that's a little short-termist. I think if you can build that relationship with the brand, fantastic. It doesn't matter how you can do that. I think we always encourage, if you're using a product or service naturally, talk about it. Because why not? You're using it in your day-to-day life. Tag them on Instagram stories. That sort of thing really helps with pitching, especially for smaller creators when they're going after a product that does lots of influencer marketing and they work with lots of creators. It helps you stand out a little bit. I think things like that can be really, really useful. I wouldn't say go and make your next YouTube video all about one product because you want to work with them. But I think being sort of more subtle with it works really nicely.
When it comes to building IP for Ali, obviously he's got the book. How else are you thinking about product development for him and kind of his roadmap over these next 2, 3, 4 years?
So Ali's sort of in love with building businesses. He's got a sort of an AI app called VoicePal. He's got his part-time YouTuber Academy course business, which has done incredibly well over the last couple of years. They also have another course business called Productivity Lab, where they help people be more productive. And I think they, as a team, love building those. And then his channels can be top of funnel for that. And sort of the association between Ali and those two brands works really nicely for YouTube, especially in the UK. He's sort of seen as the original creatorpreneur, or the one that spoke about that most outwardly. And that's led really nicely to that business, because he's seen as the guy that cracked YouTube and it made it this super amazing course that then is getting more and more 5-star reviews from pretty famous YouTubers that have blown up since taking it. But they adore making those businesses. And I work closely with Ali's COO, Angus, who's just incredible at all those sort of things. So I sort of let them take the lead on that and go out and build these businesses. And if you need my advice on those sort of things, then more than happy to help out.
So you work with Ali's COO. What will you just talk about his team structure, if you can, as far as obviously he's got a COO, but how else are they structured there? Because to run multiple businesses, no easy feat. How do they look at that?
Yeah, so Ali's sort of the CEO, Angus is sort of the COO, and then they have sort of multiple teams underneath. They'll have a content business, they'll have a sort of product business on the other side. And of course, they both feed into each other because content feeds into the product, but they're sort of set up like that. I think they're around, I can't say exact numbers, but around 25 employees at the moment across the content and the business. And that's business side, it might be sort of sales reps and then also sort of customer support managers and things like that. And then on the content side, it's sort of one person leads each platform, whether that's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, things like that.
As these creators hire, Jonny, what do you see as kind of common mistakes as someone makes their first maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 hires? Obviously, Ali's got around 20, 25 people. That's a big team. You got to have a really great COO and be a really good leader as the creator itself. But for those people kind of starting out, where do you see mistakes get made in terms of building teams?
The first one, and this is potentially quite brutal, is don't hire your friends. I think I see that a lot with creators. They hire their friends, and then it's difficult to have that professional relationship with sort of critical feedback and building a team around that. I think at the start, hiring a generalist is a really good way to go. Hiring someone that can do a bit of everything, I think, for your first hire. And you might see them develop into a leader or something like that. That's the sort of case with Angus. And really look to hire the things that somebody else could do. For instance, like not the things you don't like doing, but the things that somebody else could do 80% as well. Then it's look to delegate. So things like script writing, editing, PAs is another one I think people benefit from enormously, is having a sort of content assistant or a personal assistant helping them organize. And so because you get to a point with a creator where you sort of get capped. If you're on your own, you get capped to the amount of stuff you can put out. And someone like a content assistant, a script writer, an editor, a personal assistant can really unlock that extra inventory. And then that leads to more sponsorships, more revenue and things like that.
How does the team differ structure-wise from Ali to someone like Simon? What does Simon's team look like from a structure standpoint?
So they're actually fairly similar in terms of content team. They'll have someone sort of leading each platform. Someone will help me with sponsorships and delivering on those. And then so Simon has a platform called HelpBank, which is sort of a social media platform taking on LinkedIn, where it's people designed to help people rather than sort of brag about your own accomplishments. So you can go on there and help people for free, and people can ask questions and get help for free. And if you sort of help a certain amount of people, you go on the leaderboard and there's prizes to be won, which is really cool. And I encourage everyone to check it out. It's awesome. So they have a lot of developers on that side to get that platform up and running and make sure traffic is okay. But it's sort of split again between content and HelpBank. And then some members work across both, sort of on sponsorships for HelpBank and also sponsorships for Simon.
Talk more about that platform. That's no easy feat. When did that start? Did that start recently, in the last couple of years? How did that kind of come to be?
So it's the sort of last couple of years. The reasons for its birth was Simon realized that he can help as many people as he can, but he wants it to go beyond him, right? He talks about this idea of give without take, the idea of sort of giving something and not expecting anything in return. And the platform is built on that idea of give people help because they're asking for it and look out for each other and don't expect anything in return. Just give help because you can. So they want to sort of get that out in a really meaningful way and make that as easy as possible for people. And it's really cool. Like it's got 150,000 users, I think, at the moment, all online. And there's this sort of leaderboard of people that have helped the most people, and they get sort of special prizes where either a sponsor will provide something to the top of the leaderboard, or they can jump on a call with Simon and do sort of one-to-one advice and things like that, all for free, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. We're going to take a little bit of a 360, 180. What has been your most favorite deal, or maybe the most challenging deal that you have worked on, or maybe just the longest project that you've worked on that's come to fruition thus far?
It's an interesting question. I think the Ali and the Headspace one it's an obvious example to give because it's top of mind, but that was really cool to see come out. It was the first time I was doing something sort of in-app with somebody, and that was really nice to see how well it was received and how great and polished it looked while it was in there. I think other examples on Simon's side, we sort of partnered with an AI company called InVideo AI, and I've been speaking to them for sort of months about something, and we ended up doing this long-term partnership. And the first video we did in that long-term partnership was just this most beautiful story, helping this kid get out of a slump. And that's on like 9 million views on TikTok alone or Instagram alone. And that's sort of proof of us going to them and going, let us have creative freedom on this. Them sort of reluctantly. And we got there in the end, and then the first video goes super viral. So that was a really rewarding feeling, like touching on what we were speaking on earlier, is give us the box and then let us create the magic in the middle of it. And to sort of prove that straight away was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Both Ali and Simon have a lot of businesses, a lot of different opportunities, but it's becoming more and more popular for companies to give equity, to give big percentages of the company to a creator in sort of a partnership. Maybe they become the chief creative officer. Maybe they have an advisor role. There's a lot of different ways to cut that up. How are you seeing some of those deals come to Simon, come to Ali, and what's kind of your stance on this trend of taking equity?
I think we'll see it more and more in the next 5-10 years. I think especially in AI products, tech products, because creators that are in the right niche have the distribution there ready to go. And I think with the speed at which we're seeing these new companies pop up in tech and AI, that's the hardest bit. Like actually making a great service is no longer the hardest bit, which is a fascinating thing to say. But distribution is difficult. So I think giving creators those deals can be really, really, really useful for those brands to get in front of as millions of people straight away, especially if the audience is aligned, especially if it fits exactly within what that creator is talking about. Then I think it makes a lot of sense. And you saw that with sort of Casey Neistat and Insta360 and Marques Brownlee and things like that. If you get the right creator product fit, then I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we'll also see creators bundling together and creating sort of, I wouldn't call them venture firms, but taking equity as a group of creators and then doing distribution as a group of them to have a greater impact and sort of collectively get more equity. I think that will be a thing that we'll start to see pop up, which I think is a brilliant idea.
You're thinking that maybe it would be 2 or 3 creators in a similar spaces that all believe in one product saying, hey, let's all be on the board, or let's all have percentages of this, and then we can just 10x, 100x our distribution since we've all got this type of awareness.
Yeah, I think so. I think it could even be more creators. I think you may end up seeing 5, 10, all from the same niche. Like if it was I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example of a camera brand that wanted to come out and trying to disrupt the market. If you had a group of 10 creators all talking about videography, photography, video editing, sort of that sort of thing, the distribution would be exactly what that sort of brand would need. Talking exactly to the right market, getting deeper market penetration. And if you had all of them, you wouldn't miss anybody. If anyone's consuming content about cameras, then you're going to reach them. So that's super powerful.
I think it's a great point too about we're just starting to enter more deals like this getting done with one-off creators. You mentioned MKBHD, Casey, Ryan Trahan with Joyride. But that ability to go bigger and have multiple people all in the same category. Camera is a great example, film, video, but then also the AI space. There's a ton of great AI influencers and creators out there. And the amount of tools coming out with that is pretty crazy.
It will be interesting to see sort of how that will work. Is whether creators will favor equity with a smaller brand coming up new, or whether they'll favor Sony paying them a higher rate up front. And that'll be an interesting thing to figure out as a manager, as an agent, as a creator, is which of those is more beneficial in the long term. Because you'll probably be signing away exclusivity with either one. if you do. So it's sort of one or the other.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see the agents that are still stuck in some of the minimum guarantee world of the brand deal when an offer does comes to the table like this, and you're saying, hey, we want to give away 20%, 25% equity. Here's we want the creator to put money into the company as well. We really want them to be a true partner. And we've heard from some agents and from some people that it's, hey, what's the minimum guarantee? And it's the wrong mindset. That's not how this is going to work. There is no, if you're looking for a minimum guarantee, you should just go do more brand deals because that's the route that you're going to get. This is a, hey, they want to sell it in 3 to 5, 7 years. Here's the potential payout, but you have to have the right mindset and also the right manager to understand that it is a long-term game. It's not, you're going to get 50 grand over the next year. You're going to get promised this because yes, the risk is higher, but if you're getting equity in a company that's already established and already has revenue and profitability, it's just different.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why managers and agents have to think long term. Like in this creator game, if you want to make, I think, real serious money, there has to be a long term view on it. Because I do think creators are the future of all of this. And I think if you take that mindset to it, we're going to be around for the next decade to 100 years. Let's act like that and build out these media companies and build out these IPs and these investments and look at it from that point of view. I think the easy comparison is to sport. And you look at the likes of Roger Federer taking equity in Uniqlo, I think it was, or Andy Murray in tennis. I don't know why two tennis examples have popped up in my head, but Andy Murray taking equity in Castor over other brands and that enabling them to go then partner with loads of different brands and blow up since. So those are two great examples of that paying off. And I think that we'll see more and more of that in the next decade in the creator economy.
How do you think agencies will play in that space? Because I do think there can be some short-term thinking when you're at a big agency of, hey, let's just take the brand deal. We're going to get our 10% or 15%. Whereas sometimes there's not some of the best interest depending on who the agent is, the manager is, if they're at a bigger company versus someone in-house at a creator's company saying, yeah, this is a really good long-term deal. We might not get the cash that we want short-term, but we've got huge upside. How do you think those two will play out?
It's more of a risk with agents when they have 100 clients or something like that. I think that I don't like that system. I really like the manager system of, for instance, like with me, I have 5 and that's all I want. I don't have capacity for anybody else. Because you're able to then understand their business, understand their goals, understand what they really want to get out of this and the way they think about it. Like some creators may not want to do those long-term investments. They may not want to be a creator for the next decade. But by understanding that and having proper conversations with the person, that can then change the way you approach it. And I think you're right. I think the as a creator, being able to sort of either stand up to your agent, stand up to your manager and call them out if you think they are short-term thinking. Because agency managers, they do look after themselves at points, and you have to have that honest conversation with creators, and creators pushing back on management if you think they're acting within their own self-interest. I think it's at 16th, what we do really well is one of our core values is that long-term over complacency. Sorry, not long. I've just combined two in there. Long-term thinking over short-term gain is what I was trying to say. And really having that runs through everything we do is we're here for the long run. Let's make these into really sustainable careers, go beyond the 15 minutes of fame and build these businesses in that 16th, 17th minute. And if you come into a company and as an agent and you get that embodied into you all the way through, then the way you think about these sort of things changes compared to if you're sort of chasing revenue at every last second in a bigger agency.
And then a lot of that has to do with who you're choosing to work with as the agency, right? If you're choosing to work with the 15 seconds of fame type of influencers that are, a flash in the pan, then yeah, it really is as short term as you can get in terms of let's just squeeze it for the next, year, maybe 2. Whereas you guys work with very different type, long-term creators, very education driven and value driven in specific niches. And I think it's very easy to tell who, what agents and what agencies are short-term thinking versus some of the ones that are long-term thinking. And I do think there's going to be some evolution of if, agencies are, long-term focused, they should be long-term, they should be compensated long-term as well, right? They're taking a little bit of a risk too. And so I do think there's some opportunity to flush that out so that incentives are aligned as more of these types of deals, get put on the table.
Yeah, and I think that's also down to the management. If I want to work with all my creators for as long as term as possible, I think they're all brilliant. So that's then on me to make sure I'm brilliant for as long as possible. Because I think if I'm not adding anything, if I'm not being additive, the creator should leave. There's no point in me just taking my percentage and not bringing anything to the table. So it's on the manager to bring value at every point, rather than sort of sign a big deal and then rest on their laurels. You have to continue to bring value, whether that's in deal flow, whether that's in advice, whether that's in other services. Bringing as much value as you can is crucial.
Outside of the brand deals and that day-to-day management, I think it's a great point of, and Michael Ovitz talks about it in, when he built CAA, how he was, there's the business side of things, but there's also the personal side of things. How personal does it get on your end?
The business is all about trust and relationships. And I don't think you can build relationships without creators trusting you. So I think that's the most important thing, is building trust with those creators and acting in the right way. And if you are short-termist as a manager and the creator sees that, that's going to erode the trust you have with them. So it's all part of that longer-term strategy. We like to be as hands-on as possible with creators. I think it's useful if a creator has a manager, because they have a bird's eye view of the whole industry. I think if you're a creator, you can narrow yourself down into this. This is what works for me. This is what's going on. This is how it should always be. But as a manager working across sort of a roster, and you have then the team working across a wider roster, and it might have a brand partnerships team attached, you can see trends in the industry and what's working for other people, which may be transferable, which is really useful. We sit down with all our creators at least sort of once a year to do what we call a vision session, where we'll find a room somewhere in an office in London, sit down for 3 hours, and then walk through changes we think you can make, what we'd iterate on here, and then we sort of build a strategy for the year together. It's some of my favorite days of the year every time. And working collaboratively on those, setting those goals, setting those strategies is brilliant, because then you can hold each other accountable to the side you're working on. And I think creators do really benefit from accountability like that. We have our sort of Notion hub set up, and we can check in on goals, check in on strategy, check in on changes. That's really, really useful. So being as hands-on as possible. And I think you can only do that if you have a small roster. If I had 100 clients, that'd be impossible. But because I have 5, it makes it a lot easier, and I can be as much hands-on and communicate with them every day, pretty much.
As you've been a creator or a manager for many years now, what do you think is maybe one of the bigger mistakes that you've made early on, or maybe just one of the biggest learning lessons that you're I didn't realize it was going to be like this, or I probably shouldn't have done it this way. I need to do it, this way next time.
I think a lot of agencies and managers, and potentially myself included at one point, we're very much not client focused. We're very much talent focused, protect them. We can be rude to clients if we need to be. We can just tell them this is the way it is. But that's where the money comes from. As an agency, we're very client friendly. That's crucial. And it's not to say we don't protect our clients, but our creators. But you have to play both sides. You can't ignore one side of the table. And I think management often do, and they're sort of inflexible and don't let clients get in front of creators, or don't let creators get in front of clients. I think we're the opposite. Any opportunity I can get to bring a creator into a room with brands or clients, let's do it. And I'll make the case to the creator why it'd be valuable. And I think that's super important. It can, brands entering the influencer marketplace, it can be weird. It can be difficult. There are a lot of shortcomings to fall into. So as much as you can show them this is the right way to do it, the more confidence that's going to instill in them, and the more trust, again, to build that relationship, as well as building the relationship on the other side. And I think that is probably the trickiest part of being an agent, is being the man in the middle and keeping both sides happy and building trust with both sides at the same time.
I think it's a great point about sometimes it can be so creator focused, and you lose sight of the fact that the client is playing a big role, and that it can't just be my way or the highway type of situation, which when a creator gets bigger and bigger, it can start to turn that way if they don't have good management or a good agent.
Yeah, and I think it can be my way or the highway. It doesn't mean that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're a big creator and you have lots of brands that are competing for you. But we're doing it my way, and this is why. Giving context to everything to a client and going, this is why we're going to do it this way, because we think we know what we're doing. This is going to work for that reason. This can work for that reason. As opposed to, we're doing it this way, sign or don't sign. That's not useful for anybody. And especially if you're a manager in an agency, if you're sort of being combative with one client, then they're not going to want to work with your colleagues or not going to want to work with you on the rest of your roster. It's all about sort of rising tides lifts all ships. And I think all the creators with 16th understand that, is that we're all working together to make this work for everybody, which is a much better way of thinking about it.
Yeah, 100%. Who's a manager or agent that you look up to, or that you've, listened to on podcasts or really admire, that you kind of try and model who you want to be as an agent? Is there anyone in particular that you look up to?
I have a good friend in the UK, a guy called Simon Dent, who was an amazing sort of sports manager. He was managed footballers. He's a fantastic character, and I look up to him for sort of advice and things like that, and sort of the way he handles himself. There's probably not one that jumps to mind in the creator economy. In the creator economy, I think for me, Colin and Samir and the way they handle themselves and do their partnerships is great. I think they're a great one to look up for any creator, and I'm sure most already are. But their way of approaching things is really great, and the way they've sort of iterated on their format over the last couple of years to be more brand friendly and work in partnerships is pretty cool.
What tools do you listen to besides Colin and Samir, which I think everyone, if you work in the creator economy, you've probably listened to their podcasts or watched their videos before. I know I have a lot. Any other podcasts or maybe newsletters or books that you've read that you found super beneficial as you've kind of developed as an agent?
I think Never Split the Difference is a fantastic book around negotiation. It's written from the perspective of a US hostage negotiator. And it's a bit of a Bible internally. It's a very, very good book on doing deals and negotiations. I think in terms of podcasts, Jordan Swarzenberg, and I hope I haven't pronounced that wrong, the manager of the Sidemen, he's brilliant. And he did a podcast, I don't know if it's continuing now, but he used to sort of sit down with creators and talk through strategy and things like that, which is a great place to go if you're a manager. Funnily enough, is where I sort of first really started listening to Simon when he went on. But yeah, that's a really good resource. I think then the Published Press is a great place to be. And there are a number of other newsletters that I can't remember the name of right now that are useful. But just keeping your ear to the ground as a manager or an agent, like deciding what niche you want to work in. Like for me, it was business, entrepreneurship, productivity, and then try and watch everything in that niche. Try and know who everybody is, know all the key players, build a relationship with those key players. Because that's super, super important, of being known in your niche, like sort of industry well-known or industry famous, as Simon puts it. And that can go a long way, especially if you're building trust with the creators you work with and trust with the key players, that recommendations will just keep flowing then.
Jordan's episode, I don't know if you listened to that on Colin Samir, really, really good episode. I haven't listened to his podcast, so I need to go check that out. The other one on Colin Samir was Reed, can't remember, the CEO of Night Media. Yeah. Really good episode there as well. Just super interesting perspectives, how they kind of got into the industry and how they look at it, and really fascinating managers. And I think there's going to be more and more managers like you and Reed and Jordan just making a little bit more public on how they operate and why they do the things that they do. So really, really cool. What's your advice to someone who wants to become a manager, wants to become an agent, or just wants to get better at being an agent to creators? Because I think this profession is going to advance and we need more really good operators in the space. We always talk about it. How do you, what would you say to someone who wants to get involved?
I'll loop around, and I promise this relates, but I think I was very, very lucky in the fact that I knew I wanted to do this when I was very young. Not exactly with creators, but I knew I wanted to be a manager or an agent of some sort when I was like 14, 15. I was sort of a failed sportsman, so I thought, what's the next best thing? I'll be an agent. So like that was my way in, and I then sort of focused my studies on doing a law degree because I thought that'd be the best to sort of prepare me, and then fell in love with creators and sort of the vision of where this is going. So anyone that's in school, like if we're talking about it earlier, if you're in school and you want to be a manager or an agent, please consider doing a law degree. It's probably the best thing I've ever done to prepare me in terms of that understanding of contracts on a day-to-day basis is super important. But it also teaches you how to think in a really weird way. It teaches you how to be really critical and really think creatively about problems. So that's been incredibly useful for me. I think if you're sort of beyond that point and you're in your early career looking to move into the space, is just try and absorb as much information as possible. Watch all the podcasts, read everything, read all the books from the historic agencies like CAA and UTA and things like that, and just get as much information as you can. And then once you're in the industry, it is just a sort of a period of reps. Like the more deals you can do, the more creators you can work with, the better you'll get at it. So I think it's really interesting. I think we're still very much at the birth of this. That's probably slightly controversial. It's been going for a decade, but I think this is very much the beginning. So it's an incredibly exciting industry to be in, because I think if you do crack it and if you do sort of put as much effort into it as you can, it's an industry you can have an impact on, like more generally, and push things in the right direction, which is really exciting. I think go in with the best intentions of helping people as well. I think if you're coming in to make as much money as possible, there are better industries to do that in. I'm not saying you can't make money as a manager in the creator economy, but if you want to make as much money as possible, go and be an investment banker. Come in with intentions to help people and help build careers of these creators you sort of love.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Creator Ops Podcast. If you're interested in chatting more about the creator economy, send me a message on LinkedIn or email me at hello@creatoropsmedia.com.